Because the question wasn't about grades. It never was. It was about who you choose to become. One morning, one decision, one moment of showing up at a time. She smiled softly. The question itself isn't magical, Jason, she said. What matters is answering it truthfully, and then having the courage to live that answer every single day. Now, let me speak directly to you. If you're watching this, maybe you see yourself in who Jason used to be. Maybe you're capable, intelligent, and full of potential, but somehow your actions don't match what you know you could become. Maybe right now, you're scrolling on your phone when you know you should be studying, practicing, or working on something that matters. So, let me ask you the same question. Not what career you want, not how much money you want to make. Who do you want to be? Do you want to be the kind of person who slowly gives up on themselves, or the kind who shows up even when it's uncomfortable? Do you want to be someone who hides behind excuses, or someone who takes ownership of their choices? Here's the truth most people never hear. Discipline isn't something you're born with. It's not a personality type. It's a decision about identity, a choice you make about who you decide to be. Tonight, take a blank sheet of paper. At the top, write this question. Who do I want to be? Don't rush it. Don't write what sounds impressive. Write what's honest. Then write one more sentence. Starting tomorrow, I am someone who... Fill in that blank with truth. And tomorrow morning, live it. Not forever. Not for the rest of your life. Just tomorrow. I can't promise perfect grades. I can't promise instant success. But I can promise you this. If you wake up each day and choose to be someone who shows up, 1 year from now, you won't recognize the person you used to be. If this story resonated with you, press like, not for the algorithm, but as a commitment to yourself. Leave a comment and finish this sentence. Tomorrow, I am someone who I'll respond to as many as I can. Share this with someone who's struggling. Subscribe for more stories about real change. And remember, the question isn't magic. The power is in living the answer. Who do you want to be? Your answer shapes your future. Choose carefully, then live like you mean it. Have you ever found yourself sitting in a classroom, fully aware that you have the ability to succeed, yet watching your results fall short again and again? You're not confused by the lessons. In fact, when the instructor explains the topic, everything makes sense. But once you get home, the books stay closed, the notes untouched, and time quietly slips away. Maybe you keep telling yourself, I'll start tomorrow, until tomorrow turns into the night before the exam. Or perhaps you've convinced yourself that school just isn't your thing, that you're not the type who gets good grades, despite that small, persistent voice inside reminding you that you could do better. Here's something important you need to hear. The real gap between students who barely pass and those who earn top grades has very little to do with raw intelligence. It's not about being naturally gifted, and it's not even about working nonstop. It comes down to a single, powerful question, one most students never stop to ask themselves. This brings us to the story of Jason Park, a young engineering student whose academic life was falling apart during his third year at university. He was failing course after course.
O projeto Juntos Educar, que premia todas as áreas da educação.
That belief held him back until one professor asked him a simple question that completely shifted his mindset. That moment became a turning point. Within 2 years, Jason transformed his performance, graduating with an outstanding 3.9 GPA and earning a full scholarship to pursue graduate studies. So stay with me. If you've ever felt frustrated, unmotivated, or worried that you're letting your potential go to waste, this story and that one life-changing question might be exactly what you need to turn your academic journey around. At a mid-sized public university, where thousands of students hurried between lecture halls chasing their dreams, there was a 20-year-old engineering major named Jason Park, unaware that his future was about to change forever. Jason was never lacking intelligence. When he actually focused during lectures, he grasped ideas quicker than many students around him. Back in high school, teachers often described him as exceptionally bright, and his SAT results placed him comfortably within the top 10% nationwide. On paper, his future looked promising. Yet, by the time he reached his third year of college, things had fallen apart completely. Jason wasn't barely passing. He was outright failing. And the worst part was that the pattern never changed. Every new semester began with optimism. During the first week, he showed up to every class, convinced himself that this time would be different, that he'd finally stay disciplined. By the second or third week, mornings became optional. Skipping one lecture felt harmless. I'll review the notes later, he told himself. Weeks 4 through 8 were when attendance disappeared entirely. He stopped going altogether, relying on the idea that he could just teach himself from the textbook right before exams. Weeks 9 through 12 brought panic. Sleepless nights, desperate cramming sessions, caffeine-fueled hope. And then the results came back. Another failed exam, just like every semester before. The cycle repeated without mercy. Jason's GPA dropped to 1.8. He was placed on academic probation. The university sent formal warnings, 2 of them, making it clear that suspension was the next step if nothing improved. Meanwhile, his parents called weekly. They were immigrants who had spent years working exhausting overtime shifts just to pay for his education. "How are your classes going?" his mother asked. "They're good," Jason replied every time. "Everything's fine." It wasn't true. What haunted Jason most wasn't the failing grades. It was the painful awareness that he could do better. He knew he had the ability to succeed if he actually committed, but somehow he never did. Each morning at exactly 7 a.m., his alarm rang. And every morning, without exception, he hit snooze. Just today, he thought, I'll skip this once and catch up tomorrow. Tomorrow never arrived. Across the room, his roommate Mike followed a completely different routine. Night after night, Mike studied consistently, stayed on schedule, and maintained a solid 3.5 GPA. Watching that only deepened Jason's frustration, reminding him daily of the gap between what he was doing and what he was capable of becoming. Jason often glanced over at Mike, sitting quietly at his desk, books open, notes neatly organized. Each time, a heavy mix of embarrassment and bitterness washed over him. Must be nice, Jason thought. Some people are just born with discipline. They wake up early, do the work, stay consistent. I'm not like that, he told himself. I never will be. Then one cold evening in November, his phone buzzed. His mother's name lit up the screen. "Jason," she said, her tone unusually tense, "we received an email from the university today." His heart skipped. "It says you're failing 3 courses. 3. Is that true?" Jason felt his stomach twist. I can fix it, Mom. I just need a little more time." "You've been saying that for 2 years," she interrupted, her voice shaking. "Do you have any idea how hard your father and I work? How much we give up for you to be there?" There was a pause. Then, more quietly, she said, "Maybe college isn't right for you." Her words cut deep. "Maybe you should come home. Find a job. We can't keep paying for you to throw this opportunity away." The call ended. Jason sat frozen on the edge of his bed, phone still in his hand, chest tight, throat burning. For the first time, he couldn't hide from the truth anymore. He wasn't unlucky. He wasn't misunderstood. He wasn't a victim of bad circumstances. Every single day, through his choices or lack of them, he had been choosing this outcome. He had been choosing to fail.
O projeto Juntos Educar, que premia todas as áreas da
Jason forced
educação.
himself out of bed and walked to campus. Instead of avoiding responsibility like he always did, he went straight to office hours. Professor Martinez taught engineering thermodynamics, the most feared course in the department. She was in her mid-50s, respected, strict, and known for never lowering her standards. Jason stood outside her door for a moment, took a breath, and knocked. "Come in," she called. He stepped inside. Professor Martinez glanced up from her laptop and raised an eyebrow. "Jason Park," she said calmly. "I was wondering when I'd finally see you." I wanted to talk about my grade," Jason said, barely meeting her eyes. "You're failing," she replied without hesitation. "You've attended 4 out of 23 lectures. You scored 23% on the midterm." She looked directly at him, her gaze steady. "So tell me, why are you here?" "I need to pass this class," Jason said quickly. "If I don't, I'll be suspended." She shook her head slightly. "That's not what I asked." She leaned forward. "Why are you here today? Why now?" The question hit harder than he expected.
O projeto Juntos Educar, que premia todas as áreas da educação.
"My parents. Your parents?" Professor Martinez leaned back in her chair. "Jason, I'm going to be honest with you. I've been teaching for 26 years. I've met hundreds of students just like you, intelligent, capable, full of potential." She paused. "And do you know what they all have in common?" Jason stayed silent. Professor Martinez continued, her tone calm but firm. They all come to my office around week 11, she said. Always panicking, always desperate for extra credit or special exceptions. And every single one of them brings the same explanations: family pressure, mental stress, personal problems, bad luck. She paused, but none of them give me the real reason. Jason swallowed. What's the real reason? He asked softly. Professor Martinez stood up, picked up a marker, and turned to the whiteboard. With slow, deliberate strokes, she wrote a single sentence in bold letters. Who do you want to be? She turned back to him. Not what scores you want. Not what GPA you need to survive this semester, she said. I'm not asking about outcomes. I'm asking about identity. Who do you want to be as a person? Jason stared at the words, his mind blank. I don't get it, he admitted. She nodded. Let me explain what I see. I see a young man who has built his entire self-image around not trying. You avoid studying because if you actually gave your full effort and still failed, you'd be forced to question your intelligence. By not trying, you protect your ego. The words landed heavy. Jason felt his throat tighten. He hated how accurate it sounded. But tell me, she continued, is that the person you want to be? She stepped closer. The smart but lazy guy? The one everyone says has potential but never proves it? Or do you want to become someone else? She gestured toward the board. Someone who shows up, someone who puts in effort, someone who fails sometimes but refuses to quit. She tapped the marker against the whiteboard once. Go home. Think about this seriously. She cleared her throat. And when you have an honest answer, not something that sounds impressive, not something you think I want to hear, but something that's true, come back. Then we'll talk. That night, Jason sat alone at his desk, staring at a blank sheet of paper. The question echoed in his head. Who do you want to be? He wrote a few answers, then crossed them out. Someone successful. Too generic. A good son. Still not honest enough. The hours passed quietly. At 1 a.m., Jason finally wrote a sentence that made his chest tighten. I want to be someone who doesn't give up on himself. He leaned back and realized something painful. Every time he slammed the snooze button, he was quitting on himself. Every lecture he skipped, every assignment he ignored, those weren't accidents. They were small acts of self-abandonment. The smart but lazy version of him wasn't who he was. It was who he became after hundreds of tiny decisions to give up. Jason picked up his pen again, and then, slowly, he wrote a second sentence. Starting tomorrow, I choose to be the kind of person who shows up. The next morning, Jason's alarm rang sharply at 7 a.m. His hand reached for the snooze button out of pure habit. Every instinct told him to stay in bed, just this once. But then he remembered the sentence he had written the night before. He paused, took a breath, and got up. He went to class. Not only that, he sat in the front row. After the lecture, Jason approached Professor Martinez. His voice was steady but sincere. I've thought about your question, he said. I want to be someone who doesn't quit on himself, someone who shows up. She smiled just slightly. Good, she replied. That means the real work starts now. The rebuilding process was anything but easy. Professor Martinez was honest with him from the beginning. You may not pass this course this semester, she said, but what you're building will matter far more than one grade. Jason followed the plan anyway. By week 3, he barely understood a third of the material. Still, he showed up. By week 7, his understanding had climbed to nearly 70%. And for the first time, he found himself genuinely interested in the subject. By week 10, Jason scored a 78% on the final exam. When he saw his final grade, a C, he didn't feel disappointed. He felt something new: pride. For the first time in years, he hadn't disappeared when things got uncomfortable. He stayed. I didn't save you, Professor Martinez told him afterward. You saved yourself. You lived your answer. That single C in thermodynamics became the moment everything changed. The following semester, Jason carried the same question with him every day. Who do I want to be? Someone who shows up. The alarm rang at 7 a.m. No debate. Front row, no excuses. Slowly, the results followed the identity. His GPA rose, 3.4, then 3.7, then 3.8. By his senior year, Jason was almost unrecognizable. The student who once avoided class was now a teaching assistant for the very course he had nearly failed. When he applied to graduate school, his application essay didn't focus on grades or awards. It centered on one question that reshaped his life. On graduation day, Jason walked across the stage with a 3.9 GPA in his final year and a full scholarship to a top-tier graduate program. In the crowd, his mother wrapped him in a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you," she said. Jason smiled. "I'm proud of myself too, Mom." Before leaving campus, he visited Professor Martinez one last time. "I'm going to become a professor," he told her. "And when students come to me lost and struggling, I'm going to ask them the same question you asked me." She nodded knowingly.